Everyone, what if you could change your life in just 3 days? No, not by doing something extreme, but by simply changing the way you talk to yourself. Most of us live with an inner critic. That voice inside your head that says, you're not good enough. You always mess things up. Why even try? And we listen. We let that voice define who we are and how far we go. But imagine this for just 3 days. You decide to talk to yourself like someone you love, someone you believe in, someone worth fighting for. Tell yourself, I've made mistakes, but I'm growing. I'm proud of how far I've come. I am capable. I am enough. Your brain is listening, and when your inner voice becomes kinder, your actions begin to align with confidence. You show up differently. You bounce back faster. You believe deeper. So, try it, just for 3 days. Talk to yourself like someone who deserves love, growth, and greatness. You'll be amazed what starts to change. The way we talk to ourselves, those silent conversations we have in our own minds, is one of the most powerful forces shaping our lives. From the moment we wake up to the moment we fall asleep, we're constantly narrating our experiences, our abilities, and our worth. This internal dialogue becomes the lens through which we view not only the world but ourselves. If your inner voice is harsh, critical, or filled with doubt, you begin to internalize that negativity. You might start believing you're not smart enough, not attractive enough, not disciplined enough to succeed. Even worse, you'll make decisions based on those beliefs, turning down opportunities, avoiding challenges, or settling for less than you're capable of achieving. The limitations don't come from your actual ability, they come from what you've convinced yourself you can't do. On the other hand, when your inner voice is supportive, encouraging, and kind, your perception shifts. You begin to see challenges as opportunities, failures as lessons, and yourself as someone with value and potential. Doesn't mean lying to yourself or pretending everything is perfect. It means choosing a voice that helps you rise instead of one that keeps you down. You become your own source of strength rather than your biggest obstacle. Our minds respond to repetition. So if you constantly tell yourself you're a failure, your brain starts to look for ways to confirm that story. But if you speak to yourself with belief, your brain will begin to act in alignment with that belief, seeking evidence that supports it and adjusting your behaviors accordingly. In truth, the voice inside your head is not fixed. It's been shaped over time by parents, teachers, past experiences, and society. But now, as an adult, you have the power to retrain that voice. You get to decide whether it builds you or breaks you. And that decision will affect every aspect of your life. From the goals you set, to the risks you take, to the relationships you nurture. Your self-talk is not just background noise. It's the script you're living by. And you are the author. Negative self-talk is one of the most common and unnoticed habits that people carry with them every single day. It operates in the background, often so subtly that we don't even realize it's happening, shows up in the form of quiet judgments, self-criticism, and mental commentary that we've grown so used to, it feels normal, natural, even. We might tell ourselves things like, I always mess this up, I'm not good with people, or why would anyone listen to me? These phrases often emerge automatically in moments of stress, failure, or uncertainty. And over time, habitual negativity becomes the default mental setting. What starts as an occasional thought becomes a repeated belief, and eventually a deeply ingrained identity. The danger of this pattern lies in how invisible and accepted it becomes. Many people don't even question it. They assume it's just how their mind works, or worse, they think these thoughts are truths rather than habits. These thoughts are not objective reality. They are interpretations filtered through past wounds, fears, and conditioning. What's more, this constant drip of negative self-talk affects not just how we feel about ourselves, how we perform. Studies in psychology have shown that when individuals engage in repeated self-criticism, their motivation decreases, their stress levels rise, and their ability to solve problems or bounce back from setbacks weakens. Like trying to climb a mountain while someone's constantly whispering in your ear that you're not strong enough to make it, and that someone is you. This type of mental habit also erodes confidence in the long term. You may avoid speaking up in meetings, shy away from new experiences, or stop pursuing goals altogether because a voice inside has already decided you're going to fail. The tragedy is that voice often isn't even yours. It may have come from a teacher, a parent, or an early experience, but somewhere along the way, it was internalized and mistaken as fact. What's truly important to recognize is that this cycle is not set in stone. As we've unconsciously trained our minds to speak in a negative tone, we can also consciously train them to shift towards something healthier, more compassionate, and more empowering. But the first step is awareness, understanding that this default mode exists, and realizing just how much damage it quietly inflicts on our self-esteem, our choices, and our lives. Negative self-talk is like a toxic background app running in your mind, draining your energy, distorting your focus, and limiting your potential. And until you bring it into the light and challenge it, will keep quietly sabotaging you from within. One of the most empowering truths about self-growth is this: you don't have to wait for your circumstances to improve in order to start speaking to yourself differently. You don't need a new job, a perfect body, more money, or external validation to begin the process. What you need, first and foremost, is a shift in your inner dialogue. It's a common misconception that change starts from the outside. We tend to believe that once life gets easier, or once we earn the right to be confident, kind to ourselves, or proud of who we are, then we'll start thinking more positively. But the truth is that the transformation begins internally, with how you choose to interpret your experiences, how you frame your identity, and what kind of language you use in the privacy of your own mind. Changing your self-talk doesn't cost money, doesn't require any special tools, and can begin immediately, even in the middle of a struggle. For example, let's say you made a mistake at work. Your automatic reaction might be, "I'm such an idiot, I always screw up." That's negative self-talk reinforcing a disempowering narrative. But with intentional focus, you can pause and reframe. "I made a mistake, but I'm learning from it. I'm human, doesn't define me." Notice that nothing outside of you has changed. The situation is the same. But the inner response has shifted from self-sabotage to self-compassion. This internal adjustment creates a ripple effect. The more often you correct negative self-talk, the more you rewire your brain's default pathways. Over time, your mind becomes a more constructive, safe space, less focused on fear and failure, and more attuned to growth and resilience. Inner environment is what fuels sustainable progress. Think of your mind like soil. The words you speak to yourself are the seeds. If you plant doubt, criticism, and fear, that's what will grow. But if you plant encouragement and patience, you'll begin to harvest a completely different life experience. And again, this doesn't require anyone else to validate you. It doesn't rely on external rewards. The work is internal, quiet, and often invisible to the outside world. But its impact can be life-altering. What makes this change so accessible is that it starts with awareness and a decision. A decision to stop letting old narratives dominate your present. A decision to treat yourself not like a failure waiting to happen, but like someone who is worthy of respect and capable of progress. This shift isn't flashy or dramatic, but it's powerful. The kind of shift that lays the foundation for everything else to improve. Relationships, performance, health, and happiness. Because you've changed the way you see yourself at the most foundational level. No matter where you are, how stuck you feel, or what you've been through, this is a change that begins within your own mind. It's always available. It's always yours to choose. Imagine your closest friend came to you, defeated after a bad day, saying, "I'm such a failure. I can't do anything right. I'm a mess." How would you respond? Chances are you'd be quick to reassure them. You'd remind them of their strengths, offer comfort, help them see the situation with perspective. You'd say things like, "You're being too hard on yourself," or "Everyone makes mistakes. You've got this." You'd be kind, supportive, and compassionate, because that's what people deserve when they're struggling. Yet, when we find ourselves in similar situations, we often respond in the exact opposite way. Instead of kindness, we meet ourselves with criticism. Instead of encouragement, we offer judgment. And instead of patience, we heap pressure and shame. It's as if we believe that cruelty will make us stronger, or that being hard on ourselves is the only way to improve. But what this really does is erode our self-worth, damage our confidence, and make every stumble feel like a defining failure. There is a massive difference between accountability and self-abuse. Holding yourself to high standards is healthy. Tearing yourself down for falling short is not. You wouldn't call your friend a loser for having a hard time. You wouldn't berate them for not being perfect. So why speak to yourself in a way you would never speak to someone you care about? The truth is, you deserve the same level of compassion you so willingly give to others. In fact, you need it. Your mind needs to feel safe within itself in order to grow. When we feel supported internally, when our inner voice is patient, kind, and encouraging, we become more resilient, not less. We try harder, not because we fear punishment, because we believe in our potential. We bounce back faster from setbacks because we're not dragging guilt and shame with us. This shift in self-talk requires mindfulness and deliberate practice. It means catching yourself in moments of self-judgment and asking, would I say this to someone I love? If the answer is no, then you know it's time to reframe your inner dialogue. Instead of, I'm so stupid, say, I'm still learning. Instead of, I'll never get this right, say, I'm figuring it out step by step. These subtle shifts create a gentler, more empowering inner climate. When your mind becomes a space of encouragement rather than hostility, your entire relationship with yourself changes. And from that change comes the ability to handle life with more grace, courage, and clarity. Speaking to yourself with kindness isn't just about feeling better. It's about creating a foundation of emotional strength, and self-respect supports every other aspect of your life. When it comes to personal growth or making changes to our mindset, many people feel daunted before they even begin. The idea of shifting a lifelong habit, especially something as deeply ingrained as how we talk to ourselves, can feel like an impossible task. We think it will take years of therapy, endless discipline, or some radical transformation to start being kinder to ourselves. But the truth is, you don't need to change everything overnight. You just need to begin. That's why committing to a short, focused time frame, just 3 days, can be incredibly powerful. It breaks the process down into something bite-sized and manageable. You're not promising to change your self-talk forever, or to become perfectly positive every second of the day. You're simply making a choice to observe and shift your inner dialogue for a small window of time. That feels doable. That feels real. In just 3 days, you can start to build awareness. You'll begin to catch those critical automatic thoughts that usually pass unnoticed. You might notice how often you say things like, I can't do this, or this is just who I am. Once you become aware, you create space for choice. And with that choice, you can begin to redirect your inner voice just slightly towards something more compassionate, constructive, and empowering. 3 days is not a finish line. It's a spark. Gives your mind the chance to experience a different kind of self-talk. To see how it feels when your inner dialogue becomes a source of support rather than sabotage. Even a short trial can create noticeable changes in how you carry yourself, how you respond to challenges, and how you treat yourself in moments of doubt. What's more, a short challenge like this reduces resistance. Your mind doesn't panic at the thought of forever. It's just 3 days. That subtle shift in framing helps you avoid procrastination and perfectionism, which are often barriers to change. You don't need to be flawless, need to be willing to try something new even temporarily. And here's the magic: once those 3 days are over, many people find themselves wanting to continue. They start to notice how much lighter, calmer, and more motivated they feel. They realize how much more energy they have when they're not constantly battling themselves. And that realization becomes fuel for deeper, more lasting change. It all begins with a simple, manageable commitment. You're not changing your entire life. You're just changing your tone for 3 days. You're giving yourself a trial run at a healthier, more empowering way of being. And often, all it takes to plant a seed of transformation that continues to grow long after the 3 days are over. The way you speak to yourself has a direct and measurable impact on how you feel, how you act, and what you believe you're capable of. While it might seem like your thoughts are invisible or inconsequential, they are actually shaping your inner reality every second of every day. Your self-talk, whether it's encouraging or discouraging, becomes the mental framework from which your confidence, emotions, and decisions are built. Confidence at its core, just about past achievements or how you appear to others. It's largely built on what you consistently tell yourself about your ability to handle life. When your inner dialogue is positive and affirming, when you tell yourself, I can figure this out, or I've overcome challenges before, you create a psychological environment where confidence can grow. You start to trust yourself more, take more risks, step into situations with a mindset of capability rather than fear. This doesn't mean you'll never feel doubt, but it means you'll be far more likely to act despite it. Your mood too, deeply influenced by the quality of your self-talk. Imagine waking up in the morning and immediately thinking, this day is going to be awful. I don't want to deal with anything. That single thought can trigger a cascade of low energy, irritability, and a sense of defeat before the day even begins. But now imagine waking up and saying, today might be tough, but I can handle it. I've got tools, I've got strength, and I'm going to take it one step at a time. Same external reality, entirely different internal experience. That shift in self-talk can elevate your mood, increase resilience, and set a tone of optimism rather than dread. Behavior follows belief. If you believe, because of your self-talk, that you're lazy, unlucky, or not good enough, you'll act in ways that reflect that narrative. You might avoid new challenges, procrastinate, or downplay your goals. But if your inner voice reminds you that you're capable, resourceful, and worthy, your behavior naturally begins to reflect those truths. You'll take more initiative. You'll be more consistent. You'll recover more quickly from setbacks because your self-talk won't allow a single mistake to define your entire identity. Also, a strong neurological component to all of this. Your brain is constantly forming new connections based on repetition and reinforcement. The more you engage in positive self-talk, the more those thought patterns become hardwired into your brain. Over time, optimism, confidence, and resilience stop being things you try to practice. They become second nature. Positive self-talk is not about ignoring reality or pretending everything is perfect. It's about choosing a mental narrative that supports your growth instead of undermining it. About giving yourself the same encouragement you'd give to someone you believe in, because that's exactly what you need in order to show up fully in your life. The words you use in your own mind carry weight. They're not just thoughts. They are blueprints for your future actions, feelings, and self-concept. The human mind is remarkably adaptive. It learns not just from experience, from repetition, especially the repetition of inner dialogue. Every time you say something to yourself, whether it's encouraging or critical, your brain is listening, and more importantly, it's building. Over time, repeated thoughts form deeply rooted beliefs, and those beliefs begin to shape your identity. If you continually tell yourself, "I'm not good at this," or "I'll never change," those statements don't just stay as passing thoughts. They sink in and solidify. They become the story you tell yourself about who you are. And stories are powerful. Once you adopt a story as truth, you begin to live it out, often unconsciously. You'll start to behave in ways that confirm that narrative, filter your experiences through it, and dismiss anything that contradicts it, even if it's positive. This is how self-fulfilling prophecies work. If you believe you're socially awkward because you've told yourself that countless times, you may start avoiding social interactions. When you do interact, you might feel nervous and stiff, which then confirms your belief. But what started the whole cycle wasn't reality. It was your internal voice and the repetition of a limiting thought. Conversely, the same mechanism can work in your favor. If you start telling yourself, "I'm resilient," even before you fully feel it, and you repeat that thought consistently, your brain will begin to accept it as part of your identity. You'll start acting in ways that align with resilience. You'll face challenges with a bit more steadiness, a bit more grit, and you'll start gathering evidence that supports the new belief. Eventually, what once felt like a stretch will feel natural. And that's the power of intentional self-talk. It helps you grow into the best version of yourself, not by pretending, but by practicing. It's important to recognize that identity is not fixed. We are constantly evolving, constantly shifting, and that evolution is largely influenced by what we tell ourselves on a daily basis. Every time you choose a self-affirming thought, you are planting the seed of a stronger belief. Every time you refuse to repeat the old story that limits you, you're creating space for a new, more empowering narrative to take root. And while beliefs can take time to fully form, they always begin with a single thought, single sentence, a moment of choosing to speak differently to yourself. That's why it's so essential to be mindful of your words, even when no one else can hear them. Your self-talk is not just background noise. It's a script your subconscious mind follows. It's instruction. It's influence. And with enough repetition, it becomes the foundation of your confidence, your actions, and ultimately, your identity. You are not simply what has happened to you. You are not bound by the labels others have given you, or even by the ones you've given yourself in the past. You are, in large part, what you continue to say to yourself, because those words build the beliefs that shape your future. There is no voice you hear more than your own. Not your parents, not your partners, not your friends. Yours. From the moment you wake up to the moment you fall asleep, your inner voice is narrating, evaluating, and interpreting everything that happens around you. It's constant. It's intimate. And whether you realize it or not, has a profound influence on how you feel, how you act, and how you view yourself. Because you hear your own voice so frequently, becomes incredibly powerful, either as your greatest source of strength or your most damaging form of sabotage. Most people are their own worst critics. They mentally beat themselves up over mistakes, compare themselves harshly to others, and talk themselves out of opportunities out of fear and self-doubt. And over time, this voice becomes so familiar that it starts to feel like truth. Doesn't even sound like criticism anymore. It just sounds like me. But this internal voice is not some immovable force. It's trainable. And if you're going to live with it for the rest of your life, it makes sense to make it an ally instead of an enemy. You don't need to wait for someone else to reassure you or encourage you. You have access to the most important voice every single day, your own. The key is to make that voice one of support, honesty, and encouragement, rather than guilt, fear, and shame. When your inner voice becomes supportive, everything changes. Instead of crumbling under pressure, you find your inner voice saying, "You've handled hard things before. You can do this." When you feel like giving up, it says, "Take a break, but don't quit." You're closer than you think. And when you mess up, instead of hearing, "You always ruin everything," you hear, "It's okay. Mistakes are part of the process. You'll do better next time." This doesn't mean lying to yourself or pretending everything is perfect. It means speaking to yourself the way a wise, compassionate mentor would. Someone who believes in you even when you doubt yourself. Someone who tells you the truth, but never with cruelty. Someone who pushes you, but never tears you down. Your self-talk becomes a kind of inner coaching. And just like with a great coach, it builds resilience, confidence, and the ability to face challenges with a steady mind. The stronger and more supportive your inner voice becomes, the less you depend on external validation. You don't need everyone to approve of you because you already have a source of encouragement within. And perhaps most importantly, when you become your own source of strength, you become more grounded and more whole. You don't have to fake confidence. You build it moment by moment, word by word. Every time you respond to a doubt with a compassionate truth, every time you lift yourself up after a fall, every time you acknowledge your growth, instead of focusing on your flaws, you are reinforcing the kind of relationship with yourself that leads to real, lasting transformation. No one else lives inside your head. No one else has the power to speak to you as often or as intimately as you do. So it's not just important, it's essential that the voice you live with is one that empowers and believes in who you're becoming. So here's my challenge to you. Just 3 days. 3 days of intentional, empowering self-talk. Not perfection. Not pretending. Just presence. Just awareness. A willingness to speak to yourself like someone who matters. Because you do. Your words have weight. Your voice has influence. And every time you choose to speak with compassion instead of criticism, you are rewriting your story. You are building a relationship with yourself rooted in strength instead of shame. And from that foundation, there is no limit to what you can become. You've spent enough time being your own worst critic. For the next 3 days, try being your loudest supporter, your calmest guide, your truest friend. You don't need anyone's permission. You just need to begin. Because when you change the way you speak to yourself, you begin to change the way you live. Talk to yourself like it matters. Because it does. Talk to yourself like you care. Because you should, and talk to yourself like you believe in your future. Because your future is listening. Thank you.